seeing math confidence, inspire. Yeah, and those words, there's a lot of really big words, I think, in our mission. The one that's really kind of resonated with me over the years is individuals, because at Math Learning Center, we are really committed to not just students, but into supporting all people, educators, family members, young, old, really develop their mathematical abilities and their confidence. So that's kind of at the core of who we are. So we've developed several math programs over the years. In addition to our core curriculum, Bridges and Number Corner, Math Learning Center also offers a pre-K program and an intervention program, which is targeted students who are working at that tier 2 in the RTI model. Intervention has 9 models, or I'm sorry, 9 volumes, which have been created and written for interventions as opposed to extensions. There are 3 basic components to each of the 30-minute sessions that include warm-ups, activities, and there's also a written piece. Every 5th session is always devoted to progress monitoring. And the Bridges Intervention materials provide opportunities for students to engage in the critical areas at each of the grade levels. And you will have access to the online intervention materials that are included with your Bridges Educator accounts. And you can also purchase intervention kits, which would include all of the components and materials that you would need to work with small groups of 6. On our website, you'll also find information about our material grants, our Bridges University program and Math Ed scholarships, as well as a variety of free resources, which include math apps and downloadable lessons and publications. And later, Nataki is going to be showing you some of these. We really encourage you to use these resources with your students and families. They're free and open to the public. You don't need passwords. So we encourage you to make use of them. But today we're going to focus specifically on Bridges Second Edition, which is a comprehensive program which addresses both the content and the math practice standards. So if we take a look at the daily structure of Bridges in kindergarten through 5th grade, each day will consist of a math block that includes problems and investigations and workplaces, as well as a 20-minute block of Number Corner. And a lot of people think of Number Corner as calendar on steroids because it's about the calendar, but there's really so much more that goes into it. So together you'll have 80 minutes of math per day. And the nice thing about this is there's some flexibility with Number Corner. Some teachers choose to have Number Corner as part of their 80-minute block. Others choose to have it as part of their morning meeting or at the end of the day. Really finding the time where it fits into your schedule is what's important. Lots of teams in our school did things differently because we all had different schedules. So we're going to be taking a closer look at each of these 3 components in a minute. But first, let's take a look at the yearly structure. So you'll see that the structure is broken into units, modules, and sessions. There are 8 units at each grade level, and a unit represents about 1 month of instruction. And then each of the units are divided into the 4 modules, each representing about 1 week. And then the modules are broken into 4 to 6 sessions, which represent your daily lessons. So each unit will have about 20 sessions, which gives you a total of 160 days of instruction. In grades 1 through 5, Unit 8 is an engaging STEM unit where you'll get to experience marble rolling, paper gliders, building bridges, playground design. It's a kind of a fun way to end the year with that STEM unit. So let's take a closer look at the elements of the curriculum. This is the part I love. It's all the stuff, the manipulatives and the materials, those hands-on things that kids and teachers love. You'll receive the hard copies of the teacher guides. You'll get 1 binder for each of the 8 units. 3 binders for the number corner component, and 1 assessment binder. Bridges includes a comprehensive manipulative kit that supports up to 30 students, and Number Corner also has its own manipulative kit to support each workout. Your kit will include colorful, durable, pre-made components like game boards, card decks, and spinners, and those will support the 3 dozen workplaces at each grade level. And then each Bridges classroom will also get a free account to the Bridges Educator site. We like to call it the BES, and it is an online teacher portal that is full of resources and tools, professional development that helps support implementation. You can purchase additional accounts if you need for support staff like math coaches, if you need them. And again, Nataki is going to take us on a tour of the Bridges Educator site towards the end of our presentation so that you can really see what it has to offer.
Ms. Hammer, just to be sure, I'm sorry to interrupt you. For the educator site, is that just 1 per home room? Am I understanding? Because you said you could purchase additional ones for other resource teachers. So just each home room, if it were purchased, would get that?
I believe that is true, Melissa. And Nataki, I believe it's 1 for each kit that is purchased.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you'll also, each grade level has consumable student books. And these include the instructions, worksheets, record sheets that you'll use for group work or independent practice. And the student book connects to the Bridges daily lessons. The Number Corner student book connects to the Number Corner workouts. And then that Home Connections book allows students to practice and share their learning with families. All of these workbooks are available in Spanish. You can purchase them as consumables, or you can copy them from the teacher guide or download them from the Bridges Educator site. So let's take a look at the Bridges classroom. Bridges Second Edition is an inquiry-based, student-centered curriculum. It's really focused on developing mathematical thinking and conceptual understanding. A Bridges classroom will feature whole group, small group, independent activities that are problem-centered. Your students will discuss and debate problems. They make and share conjectures, explain their thinking, both orally and in writing and through different visual representations. In Bridges, students learn that math makes sense. And that's what we want them to do, isn't it? Is to make sense of math. And they do this as they explore visual models and talk about mathematical strategies. So you might have noticed in this picture of some 5th graders, how they're working together, problem solving as they share their thinking and strategies. So Bridges has 3 main components: problems and investigations, workplaces, and Number Corner. So let's take a look at those now. Problems and investigations are inquiry-based, and this is where you're going to have those whole group activities that incorporate periods of independent and partner work. They often begin with a problem that's posed by the teacher and then followed by time for students to think independently, work, talk in pairs or small groups, but always coming back together as a class to share and compare strategies and solutions. This is where you're going to hear and see your students discussing and debating problems, making and sharing those conjectures and explaining their thinking. And for most of our students, this is a new way to think as mathematicians. And I have to say, working with 1st graders for about 34 years, it is truly amazing to watch even our youngest learners really step up and meet these expectations. That Bridges really allows for these learning communities to develop that foster and promote deep thinking, as well as communication and a safe place to tackle challenges. You'll see that the students are also engaged in workplaces, which is another key element of the curriculum. Workplaces are the engaging, developmentally appropriate math stations, if you will, that offer ongoing practice with key skills. Workplaces are always introduced and practiced as a whole class as part of a daily session. The students play against the teacher, which everybody always has a lot of fun with. And then the workplaces are put into the rotation where students have opportunities to revisit concepts and extend and connect their learning with different classmates over a period of weeks. Many of the games are made for partners, but some are independent activities or more open-ended partner work. And all of the components for workplace activities are pre-made and included with your Bridges kits, like I mentioned earlier. This was really a favorite part of our day in my classroom. I think my students loved it because they were playing fun games and they really didn't realize the big work they were doing. And I was able to tuck in with small groups and provide differentiation if they needed it. I could listen to their math talk and gather those important informal observations that help guide my teaching. It can be loud, and I would have to say there were times when I would scan the room, but what I was hearing was squeals of delight and groans of defeat coming from students who were really engaged in what they were doing. So I think you'll be amazed at the social emotional growth that happens and that there's a lot more going on during workplaces than just math. So as I mentioned, workplaces is a great time for teachers to differentiate. During this time, as you're moving around the room, nestling in with groups that need additional support or challenge, you'll be able to use the workplace guide. And each workplace has a guide that includes suggestions that enable the teacher to really differentiate each activity and provide additional support or challenge. You can see here on the screen that this is a second grade guide, and it highlights specific behaviors that you might notice, and then it gives you suggestions for support. So you'll see in the column on the left, it says, if you see this, then in the middle is the differentiation, whether it be support or challenge, and then it also gives you an example of what that might look like. And this is suggestions that can be put into place on the spot. They are, the differentiation is delivered through different activities like open-ended activities, purposeful questioning, and using different methods of representation. So they're built-in structures that really provide that multiple entry and access point for our students. You will also find differentiation suggestions within the workplace instructions. And these are game variations that are often in the moment suggestions, and again, don't require that additional prep or planning. Differentiations also written into the daily lessons. At the end of each unit introduction, you'll find a chart like this one that shows you where the challenge, support, and ELL suggestions are built into sessions. The support suggestions frequently address the skills that immediately precede the current skill, providing that scaffolding that our students need to be successful. And again, these are in the moment ideas, suggestions that don't require additional copying or prep, just letting you know what to be aware to look for, and then being able to read through the suggestions. So number corner is the third and final.
Hammer. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Back to the slide you were before, I saw gaps that were in there. I'm going to assume, are those the sessions where they're looking at like progress monitoring per se?
I'm sorry, sessions where they're looking at?
Where you mentioned earlier, like there are so many lessons and then there's like a progress monitoring session where they're just checking to see where students' understanding is. Is that where these gaps are without the DI?
No, these are within the Bridges sessions. These are not part of the intervention, but these will show you in your unit, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure which grade this is, but in session 2, module 1, you will see challenge opportunities in session 2 and in session 3. So there won't be any suggestions in session 4 for challenge and support, but you will find ELL suggestions.
And so I was just trying to figure out why they may not have suggestions in each of those. I didn't know if it was like a review section, or it would seem, and I'm not saying for this, just my thought process, it would seem for any session, we would look for suggestions for potential support to students. So that's why I'm wondering, are these maybe like review sections maybe? So you would have already seen stuff in the previous sessions for that. That's why I was asking.
Yes, or you may find the suggestions in the workplaces.
Mm-hmm. And Susan, I might also add that, Module 1, Session 1 could be a pre-assessment, or, and the Session 5 of Module 1 could be the check-in.
Yes. Yeah, and that will vary by grade level. Yeah. And I think they're just really built in, Melissa, where the writers felt there would be the most need for students.
Okay.
Yep, that's a good question. And when I take you on the tour of the Bridges Educator site, I can show you a skills across the grade levels chart that may answer some of the questions that I think you're having.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So Number Corner is that third component, and it's the skills program that is an essential part of your Bridges curriculum. It gives you that 20 minutes of daily workouts that really help you develop conceptual understanding as well as procedural fluency, all in the context of problem solving. The activities make use of classroom displays, and they vary a bit by grade level, but they feature calendars, growing collections, number lines, problem solving, problem strings, computational fluency, and more. So on the slide on the left, you can see this is a kind of a section of a kindergarten number corner display. And in grades K through 2, you'll have a classroom mascot that's featured in many of the workouts, such as Numberline. So you can see Hoppy down in the corner next to the Numberline in that red box. There it is. That you'll see Hoppy throughout kindergarten, and then there's one for first grade and second grade. Then in that slide, you'll also see the calendar grid, which is featured at all grade levels. And the calendar grid has a unique set of calendar markers each month that contain multiple patterns that are related to a specific skill or concept. And they foreshadow or reteach skills and concepts from your Bridges lessons. Students enjoy making predictions and unearthing the patterns, and there's a real feel of kind of mystery and suspense that comes with calendar grid that all grade levels find engaging. And although the math practices are built into the entire program, they're really apparent during Number Corner. And on the right, you can see how Number Corner provides opportunities for students to really practice these habits of mind. The teacher becomes a facilitator of learning, guiding the rich mathematical conversation and allowing students to learn from one another as they share their thinking and strategies and question and clarify their thinking. So like problems and investigations, Number Corner also includes that full set of materials that you use for the displays and the daily workout activities. And again, this was another favorite part of our day, really a time to build community, and is a powerful 20 minutes that you never want to leave and you don't want to miss. So Nataki is going to take us through assessment, visual models, and the Bridges Educator site.
Okay, so let's move on to assessment. Each grade level does come with a comprehensive assessment guide, and that includes a year-long assessment map that you can see here on the screen. And there's one for each grade level. And that assessment map is going to identify where skills and concepts are targeted for mastery. So Melissa, that might also answer a question too that you may have about that. Okay. So for an example, on this particular example, 2.0A is assessed in Unit 1. It also comes back again in October number corner. It comes back again in Unit 3. And finally, it shows up for mastery in Unit 4. So you have each of those touch points that you are kind of checking in with students to see where they are with that skill. When you look closely at the map, you'll also notice more skills and concepts that are targeted for mastery in the latter part of the year as compared to the first 3 or 4 months. Okay, that addresses the time that it takes to master concepts involving higher levels of cognitive demand through those connected experiences that progressively build and develop the depth of understanding across time and through connected experiences. So we call this meaningful distributed practice, that no skill is taught in a silo, that students will be able to engage with it many, many times throughout the year. And so Bridges, again, as Susan mentioned earlier, it's a comprehensive program and it includes forms of assessment. Those assessments come in the form of interview, especially for our younger learners, like for kindergarten and first grade students, observation assessments. They provide work samples. They engage in paper and pencil tasks. In our older grades, we have students participate in a self-assessment and reflection period. There are regular checkups, and there's a comprehensive growth assessment that's available. And so the assessment guide offers teachers the tools that you'll need to process and then use the results of that assessment to guide and inform your instructional decisions. And this is probably one of the things that you need to put at the top of your must-read material because you'll get some really, really important and key information from that guide. Okay. So in the assessment guide, you'll also find a calibrated scoring guide. And this will support teachers in looking beyond just the correct answer. And you're really, really honing in on the use of efficient strategies that students have used. It also allows teachers to assess for higher levels of depth of knowledge. The scoring guide is available as an Excel document on our Bridges Educator site. And when I take you on that tour momentarily, I'll show you how to find that. There are also progress reports that are available for teachers, students, and their families. And these progress reports are spaced in, they are spaced into both trimesters and quarters, excuse me. And that will allow teachers to communicate with families as students are making progress towards those standards. And the great thing about these is that they're also available in Spanish. Another important focus of our materials are the 8 mathematical practices. And these practices reflect the attitudes and the way of thinking and working that really characterize successful mathematicians. I love the fact that the Bridges curriculum does weave the math practices standards throughout all of the sessions, as well as the number corner workouts. So as you are planning and as teachers are facilitating lessons, you can see where the math practices show up in student participation. And in every session, you'll notice the list of those content standards, and then the math practices follow that. Usually it's about 2 that we focus on per session. And again, you'll be able to see the examples of what that practice may look like in the context of the lesson. Now we know that teachers play a huge role in nurturing the mathematical practices. And so within the assessment guide, there is a section that's devoted to the math practices. And there on the screen, you'll see a chart of the suggested questions that teachers can ask that will elicit a specific math practice. Number Corner also has key questions for each workout that promote this way of working and talking together. And in my classroom, I used to just make a copy of those key questions and I would keep it on a little ring. and I would just hang it on the board so that I could grab it, or even have students grab it to ask questions of each other to promote that dialogue. Okay. And speaking of dialogue, we're going to go into visual models, which is really the foundation to the Math Learning Center. And it's also a catalyst for classroom dialogue. So visual models, again, have been the foundation of all Math Learning Center materials from the beginning. And as Susan mentioned early, it really did grow out of the research and field experience in classrooms by the founders. So these coherent set of models across the grades really helps to build student understanding. And again, it's a distinguishing characteristic of the curriculum. So if you're taking notes, make sure you write that down. Visual models, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. All right, so this is the fun part. I like to just think about the visual models and how they evolve across grade levels. So again, we're not doing anything within a silo that what happens in first grade affects what happens in fifth grade. And this is what it may look like. So in kindergarten, students will see numbers from 0 to 20 that are represented on 5 frame, 10 frame, and double 10 frame models. And over time, the models will help students to instantly recognize quantities without having to count them. So I'm going to put Hannah on the spot. Hannah, do you know what that's called when they can instantly recognize a quantity? I'm putting her on the spot.
That's not the subitizing, is it?
It is the subitizing. Absolutely. Nice job. So we're going to subitize right now. I'm going to put us all to work and get our brains thinking. I am going to go over to an app. It's called the Numbers Frame app. It's one of the 11 free apps that are available to you on our public site. Again, you don't need a login. So I'm going to go there now. Okay, thumbs up if you can see something different on the screen than you did before. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to flash a 10 frame. If you notice, there's something hidden behind these screens that you can't see. So already we're creating suspense and wonder. Again, this is our app. It's free. And at the bottom, you have some tools. Some tools are consistent no matter what app you use, such as this screen here. So this icon means that I can shade something that I don't want students to see just yet. I can also use the math text tool that's here to write an equation. Now it doesn't do the thinking for you, but you can put your thinking in the form of an equation there. You also have the pen tool that you could use to write. So maybe students want to write an equation or write something. And then you have the ability to make a straight line by choosing this option on the pen tool. So those are just a few of the options that are consistent no matter what app that you are working with. Okay, let me erase what I just wrote, and you all have to get ready because I am going to flash a 10 frame and you have to think about how many you see, and not just how many you see, how do you see them? So I can tell that Stephanie is ready. Here we go. Okay, I need someone to unmute their mic and share. How many did you see and how did you see them? Stephanie?
I saw 6. I saw 5 on the top row and 1 on the bottom, and 5 1 is 6.
Nice thinking. Thumbs up if you also saw it the same way in which Stephanie did. If you saw it in a different way, can you unmute your mic and share how you visualize that? Hannah, did you see it a different way? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you unmuted. I apologize. Okay, let's go on to another one. Get ready. Stephanie was in the ready position. Jocelyn, I see that you're in the ready position. Here we go. How many did you see and how did you see them?
I saw 7.
Ah,
And I remembered that the last one was 6 and there was one more, so that would be 7.
so you remembered Stephanie's response of 6 and you thought, oh, that's just one more than the last time. Very nice. Okay, let's do it. Let's do this one. I'm assuming this one's going to be a little more involved. Let's see. Let's get ready. Oh, how many did you see and how did you see them? Jocelyn?
3 and 2 more, and that makes 5.
Oh, and how did, when you said you saw 3, where were the 3?
I saw 3 up top and 2 on the bottom.
Oh, nice. Did someone see it a different way?
I saw 4 and then one more.
Where were the 4 that you saw, Hannah?
They were in a little box, a little square all there together.
Oh, so that does that remind you of a strategy that we've been talking about, lots and lots and lots?
Doubles plus 1 is what I would do, but I don't know if y'all talked about that in your class.
We did, and you were there. Absolutely, doubles plus 1. Very nice. Thank you all for participating. So again, we can use the flashing to promote automaticity in making 10. This time, let's do something a little different. I'm going to flash, and I want you to tell me how many you see and how many you need to make 10. All right, so how many you see, how many more to make 10? Thumbs up if you're ready. Oh, I see you're ready. Thank you. Here we go. How many did you see? How many to make 10? I'll show it again.
I saw 10.
You saw 10? How many more to make 10?
We don't need any more. 0.
0. And you could also, take this a step further and have students to write equations. So I would use my pen tool. And so what would our equation be for the one that we just flashed, for that one? If we're trying to
10.
figure out how many more to make 10.
10 plus 0 equals 10.
Yeah. Thumbs up if you agree. Clap once if you disagree. All righty, nice job. I used to love doing the clap once because it would be a way for me to audibly hear that someone has something that they want to add to the conversation. And we would stop and students would debate and have really rich discourse about their learning and their thoughts. So again, it goes back to that mathematical discourse that is very much a part of the Bridges program. Okay, thank you all again for participating. So then students will use tallies as they begin to explore the ways in which numbers can be composed and decomposed into groups. And later they begin to use sticks and bundles and sticks. And those will be used to represent the groups of 5 and 10 in numbers that are greater than 5 as a way to develop place value. Okay. And then here's another visual model that is really used a lot in K2. It's called the number rack. You might also know it as the Reckon Rec. And this is a powerful base 10 model that allows students to create and also to manipulate numbers between 0 and 20. It combines the features of the number line, counters, and base 10 models. And so in this example, students might use the number rack to find the total using different counting strategies. For an example, they might count the beads one by one. They might also be able to trust the structure of the number rack, and they can see 5 and then count on by ones. They might recognize 8 as a combination of 5 and 3. Or they might see the relationship between addition and subtraction and they might subtract 2 beads from 10. So noticing these differences allows the teacher to use the model as a way to differentiate and nudge students forward. The number rack helps students to use strategies that promote fact fluency as they develop a deep understanding of the properties of those basic operations. I really love how the number rack gives students that concrete, hands-on chance to build and explain their solutions, as well as the window it gives students or teachers into their thinking. So again, it's another way to assess in an informal way.
Nataki, can I just kind of jump in here? Melissa, I know one of your questions was, is discourse incorporated into K2? And I think you can see through just the couple activities that Nataki just did, that our youngest learners are really able to participate and share their thinking both orally, as well as, you know, they get to make a number rack. So just using the number racks and the different visual models to help support them as they learn how to articulate their thinking.
That's good. Thank you, Susan. Very important that that discourse does show up in our youngest learners. Absolutely. Another model that's used throughout the Bridges program is the number line. So at first, with kindergartners, the number line is used simply to represent the numbers in order. And as students become more comfortable with the number line, they use it to develop and model strategies for adding and subtracting. Later, the open number line allows students to partition as they see fit. And the open number line reflects a growing sense of the magnitude and increasingly illustrates the strategies that involve a flexible approach to working with ones and tens. Number line work provides coherence throughout the grade levels. By 5th grade, students are using that number line to add and subtract fractions and decimals. That is something I never did when I was in 5th grade, ever. And they do it really beautifully. And in 2nd grade, students are exploring arrays because they're using square inch tiles and grid paper to investigate odd and even numbers. They're building a variety of arrays to represent the date, and they record the equations to express the total as a sum of equal add-ins. So by the end of the year, 2nd graders have become rectangle hunters when they're finding the area of paper rectangles by covering them with tiles. So you can imagine that this prepares them for fluency with multiplication as repeated addition and skip counting, and for understanding area in 3rd grade. Again, we're going over the progression of these area models. And students in 2nd through 5th grades will also use base 10 area pieces, which are pre-grouped into ones, tens, and hundreds. And those represent multi-digit numbers, and they'll also use these to compute those multi-digit numbers. So if you're thinking back to the bundles and sticks that I modeled that are used in K1, they're able to physically and put together and take apart those bundles of 10 sticks. But now in grades 2 through 5, because the base 10 area pieces are pre-grouped, students can't take them apart and assemble them. Instead, they'll need to do some trading. So it's crucial for the development of place value understanding that students have many, many opportunities to group and ungroup and to trade pieces. And I see Hannah smiling there because she agrees, I think. Using these base 10 pieces to add and subtract multi-digit numbers helps students to develop those strategies, including the traditional algorithm that rely upon regrouping. So we want to help them develop an understanding of the strategies, not just to use the strategies. So as we move into 3 through 5 grade land, students continue to use the base 10 pieces to look at multi-digit multiplication and division. So we're going to take a look at an example And I'm going to go again to one of our free apps. This is called the Number Pieces app. Again, these are all available to you without the need for a login. Okay, so I'm going to have you do something. I'm going to put a code in the chat for you. Oh, Susan's up. Thank you, Susan.
Okay.
So this is
You're
what I'd
welcome.
like you to do. At the very bottom of your screen, there is a key. We're going to unlock the work. So when you click on that key, you can simply copy and paste the code that Susan put into the chat into this box. So do that for me now, please.
And so I also put the mathlearningcenter.org link in there, which will take you to the apps.
I need to.
Let me go get the other. I'm putting another one in there that will take you right to the apps, and then you'll just need to scroll down to where it says the number pieces.
Mm-hmm. So you should have opened up a screen that looks like mine. Okay. So this is called the save state, which means that the teacher can do some pre-work in advance and send that code out to students. And again, you don't need a login, so students have access to the apps. Students can then type in the code that was shared by the teacher to open up their work. Another way you could do this, the teacher could do this, is at the very bottom here, there is a rectangle with an arrow that allows the teacher to share the link. So in other words, when students click on the link, it takes them directly to the work here versus having to put in a code, but either way works. Okay, so the question is, what multiplication problem do you see in this array? How might you use the model to find the answer? Can you find more than one way to count the total? And so what I might do is go through a series of your thoughts and your wonderings and your questions about this, but I'm going to move back to our slides for time's sake, because you might have seen it like this. Many students do find the total by adding up those 4 parts or those 4 partial products. So in this case, 100 plus 30 plus 20 plus 6, 156. Again, we're going through the progression. So after building and discussing multiplication problems with concrete base 10 pieces, students then move to the representational as they learn to make labeled sketches of the multiplication arrays. So here's a 4th grader's response to a story problem that involves multiplying 16 by 17. And another student in the very same class used a similar strategy without the sketch. So you can imagine how students learn from one another as they share and explain their problem-solving strategies. So I hope you can appreciate how students are moving towards this standard algorithm. In Bridges, students will always work from the concrete to the representational or pictorial, and then to the abstract, always. That's another note. Okay, although we encourage students to use the strategies and tools that make the most sense to them, we also press them to move toward increasingly efficient methods. So in this example, you'll notice that you can combine the pieces in the bottom row for a total of 26, and the pieces in the top row for a total of 130. This leads directly to the standard algorithm, which allows students to see and understand that 12 times 13 is actually 2 times 13 plus 10 times 13. And one of the most exciting things about the visual models is that they bring us back to our original goal, to make sense of math. So as students are learning a variety of visual models and strategies, they begin to thoughtfully consider which makes the most sense, depending on the problem that they're working with. And in doing that, they develop increasing levels of fluency, which includes accuracy, efficiency, and flexibility. So students might think about, using the example on the screen, the over strategy. So they might change 99 to 100 and then take 100 groups of 35 to get 3,500, and then take away the group of 35 that they went over for an answer of 3,465. They might also think about doubling and halving. So they might double 25 to 50, half 12 to 6. We could stop here and have 50 times 6, or they could go one more time and get to 100 times 3, which is 300. Okay. So then as they move into more abstract use of numbers, they might also use the ratio table. And I was simply fascinated with the ratio table. I didn't use this when I was learning math as a fourth grade student. So it really blew my mind to see what students were able to do with the ratio table when it was introduced to them. And the students really do love these. Mm-hmm. So they start with one group of 26. Right? And then they can do double, double. Then we have our 4 of 44. They can add 40 to the top of the ratio table and then take 104 times 10. Now we can add our 104 and our 1,040 for a grand total of 1,144 for 44 times 26, lots of 4s. Really does help them become flexible in their thinking. So the visual models and bridges are carefully constructed to reinforce learning. And again, it builds across grade levels to develop strong mathematical thinkers. Models are found throughout the program, and they're supported by the manipulatives that come with your classroom package. And again, we can't stress enough that these visual models are part of our free apps on the Math Learning Center public site. Susan did put that address for you in the chat. And we're going to head over to the BES. I think we have some time to give you a quick tour of the major features that are not, or that are found there. All righty. So once you get to the Bridges Educator site, you'll land on the Home tab, and the Home tab will have announcements. So like the most recent professional learning offerings, it'll have the most recent blog. Okay. You'll also have a link that takes you to those apps.
While you're right there, Nataki, can I just say there on the left, there is a Bridges intervention webinar coming up, which you can register right there if you're interested.
Yep, that's a good one. Okay, then you have, I appreciated the curriculum tab because a lot of our teachers didn't like to take all binders home every single night with them. And so you can leave your binders at school, but still plan at home because you have access to everything that's in the binders on the site. Okay, if you scroll all the way down, so Melissa, you have access to the Bridges intervention pieces there that you can take a look at. Okay, the answer keys are going to be located on the Bridges Educator site and not in the binder. So that's one important thing to note as well. And your resource tab, goodness, you have so many additional resources in addition to resources that are found in other places. It's kind of all a one-stop shop here. And I'll just open up one so that you can see. So you click on the number and it has all of the things that are relevant to that particular unit. What really helped me as the math specialist at my school is I had all of the teachers to send home this overview for every single unit. And it really gave families an idea of what would be coming up for that unit in parent-friendly language. So that when students got home and families said, hey, what did you do today? And the kid says, nothing. Families could say, oh, well, what about the number rack? Did you use the number? Oh, yeah, we did use the number rack. We did an activity that Subatized. So it really gives language for families that's used in the classroom. Okay, again, you have all of your resources here in one place. You also have, let me go back, number corner resources, and that's organized by month. Okay, and I'm going to go back up here. Next, you have the implementation tab. So this is where you can find more blog posts. You can type in anything you could possibly think of. If you want to know more about assessments, you can do grade specific, or you can have it just search for all. And every single blog that's written by real teachers and real Bridges users come up, okay? Even tips. Also in that tab here in the margin, I always think about the margin as being, you know, if I can't find something, I always think, oh, look in the margin. Your assessment tools are here in the margin. So when you click on assessment, you find your grade level, and what will happen is it'll download the Excel sheet that's already formatted. It'll download to your download folder, and that you can go back and get that from the folder. Okay. In addition to that, you have a PD library, which is really, really good. So these are sometimes they're short videos that tell you more about a topic. So if you are remote learning with Bridges, here is an example of what the math forum looks like for 4th grade. Okay. And then information for coaches. And then if you're getting started with Bridges, it has some short videos that you can watch to help you get started with that. Did I leave anything out, Susan? I went through that.
How about digital display materials?
Yes. All right, so going back to home, again, sidebar, side margin, you can find, excuse me, a link for digital display materials. And that will allow you, excuse me, that will allow you to engage with students via Smartboard, so that you don't have to have, like, you know, you could use your overhead projector if we still have those, or you could use this digital display material link that will allow you to display it in a large forum, right? So if you're using a Smartboard, you could show something to your students, and there's pretty much one digital display material for everything that you'll need. Okay.
And all of the workplaces are also available digitally now. We've created resources for 2021 just because of the change in circumstances, but the student workplaces will be staying around digitally. So even though we recommend hands-on whenever possible, there are the options for remote learning when you need it.
Yes. And also available in Spanish. So there's a button down here that allows you to change the directions to Spanish.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. I went through that really fast, but I wanted to leave time for questions. Go back to my slides. So as you're considering Bridges, just know that the professional development ongoing, there are getting started workshops. There are support workshops to follow up with your district or your school. There's ongoing support from the Bridges Educator site. There are annual open enrollment events. And there are also online courses for coaches and interventionists, okay? So I want to leave you with a couple of documents. The first, and Susan, do you mind dropping those in the chat? Thank you.
I'll get them. Yep.
The first one is a summary of the philosophy, the assumptions, and the expectations that are inherent in Bridges in mathematics. And the second one is an overview that's focused on families, how to get them oriented to your new program. So what questions do you have for us? Feel free to unmute your mic or type in the chat. We're small enough where I think you could open or unmute your mic.
Lindsay had to go, but she reminded me to ask one of the questions that she and I have been talking about are the time parameters. Because we have a 90-minute math block and 45 minutes of that is supposed to be designated to small group time. So I guess what I'm really wondering is those workplaces that are more independent, can you have kids doing those workplaces while you're working the intervention parts?
I would say absolutely. Susan, would you say absolutely?
Yeah, I would agree. And Hannah, I think another thing that you'll find out is in the assessment guide, we have workplace differentiation charts, where as you're going and tucking in with kids, you're able to start to see where those small groups are coming together, and using your universal first before you go to the intervention. But so yes, quite frequently I would either pull small groups during workplace time, or I would kind of finesse my groupings so that I had that group already together that I wanted to meet with, and then I just would tuck in. But yeah, workplaces is a great place to differentiate.
And I would add to Hannah, as long as it doesn't feel punitive, because workplaces really is, when we say it's engaging, it really is engaging, and students won't want to miss. So as much as you can still have them doing a workplace with that small group, that would be great, because we don't want it to feel like the small group is they're missing something by having to go to the small group.
Right. So that brings up a follow-up question for me, is about how long are the workplaces? Because if it would be possible for it to be like a part of a rotation so that they get their small group, tier-based work and the work session. So how long are those work sessions would they usually take?
It really is open-ended. There's no time set for that. I will say in the primary grades, in all the grades, I made sure that my teachers were allowing students to visit workplaces every single day. It was that important. Upper grades, because they have math forums and they're doing problem strings, sometimes the problems and investigation sessions run longer and they have a very short time for workplaces. And so what I would encourage, but of course we had an hour. So what I would encourage teachers to then do is to shorten the problems and investigations time to allow time to get to workplaces more often.
Yeah, in a typical 60-minute block, you're going to want to try to have at least 15 to 20 for workplaces. And I think a lot too depends upon how you choose to do your intervention. If you're pushing in, if you're pulling out, just however, you all decide as a school that works for you. I think there's probably as many different ways people are doing it than we could even imagine.
Yeah.
I might could imagine they're used like as stations, but then the DI may be when the students are with me. So if they're at my group with me, I may be meeting specifically on skills that they're needing targeting, and maybe it's previous skills, maybe it's the current skill, it depends on the students. But then using the workstations more as that independent type of piece until they're coming to me, maybe I could envision that. But you mentioned 15 to 20 minutes, like Ms. Showman pointed out, we still have 45 minutes. Are they sustainable for 45 minutes, especially at the primary level? I mean, any kid's level, obviously, because they're 3-5, but you mentioned 15 to 20 minutes. Are those stations going to be sustainable through the 45 minutes?
I think that depends, and Intaki, feel free to jump in here too.
Mhm.
I think that really depends upon how you have them set up. We really promote student choice,
Yes.
so that students are choosing, you know, where they start, and when they finish, then they move to the next one. So I think if you're doing that, yes, that may be sustainable. You know your kids best.
Mhm.
You always have 6 workplaces in play at a time. So if you know, think about 45 minutes, you know, they might get through maybe 3 a day.
Well, if you have 6, that allows options throughout the week, actually.
Right, right.
Yes,
Good. So they have multiple to select from.
right.
You
Yeah.
had, if you had 6, and if you had 15 minutes for each, they're certainly not going to get those all done in a day or in a week.
Oh, gosh, no.
Some
Yeah.
multiple options
Yeah.
for their attention span and engagement, hopefully. And I would assume those stations, because you mentioned earlier how the curriculum, some of the content is not taught like in silos, so it may cycle back around to review previous content taught, which I really like. I would assume those stations are doing the same thing since they're tied to each of those units, yes?
Yes, and students are visiting them multiple times. They don't just go to a workplace just once. And sometimes you'll have to nudge and encourage them to move on because
Sure.
they find their favorite ones.
Mhm.
But I'd also like